Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to a new episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Wednesday night, April 8, 2026, as we record this show. 12 games into the season, and the Chicago White Sox have been swept twice in 3-game series. First was opening weekend in Milwaukee, and now getting swept by Baltimore, which came on the heels of them sweeping Toronto. So the White Sox are 4-8, dealing with injuries like many teams. Brooks Baldwin's 2026 season ended before it started, as he's now on the 60-day injured list. But on the surface, a most shocking move is that opening day starter and 2025 All-Star starting pitcher Shane Smith has been optioned to Charlotte. On Tuesday against Baltimore, Smith had 8 strikeouts, didn't allow a run, and only allowed 1 hit. So what's the problem? 5 walks and 99 pitches only got him through 3 2/3 innings. White Sox manager Will Venable spoke to the media prior to Wednesday's game to explain the thought process with the demotion of Shane Smith.
Shane, clearly he is in a spot where he needs to get to the best version of himself, and he's not quite there right now. And as he continues to work through, the things that he needs to do to get there, we just can't, have that happen here. Where it comes at the cost of wins, at the cost of our bullpen. He understands that and was accountable to that. So just give him the chance to go down to Charlotte with a very clear, structured plan, and really get back to dominating with the four-seam fastball, which is what we've seen from him, and is part of his superpower, what makes him great. So that'll be the focus for him.
So what was the breaking point from Tuesday's outing that caused the White Sox to make this decision?
Yeah, just the fastball command. I mean, I think about games last year where I was like, gosh, he's bullying guys with his fastball in the zone, and he's really confident in it, and just haven't seen that this year. And, that's what he'll be going on and working on. I thought yesterday was a really good example when he is good and in the zone. He's getting a ton of swing and miss. The curveball, the changeup was really good, but really it was the four-seam fastball throughout, yanking it a lot, just confident in using it, and it's a little too erratic for him to be effective. So, I think he's going to be working on that four-seam fastball, and then the total mix, clean up some things in his pregame and his bullpens and some mechanical stuff, and get him right back on track.
A challenge the White Sox will have is managing the mental aspect of baseball for Smith. How does a player who was an all-star last year and really finished 2025 on a heater deal with the demotion like this to start the next season?
It can be challenging. We've had success in this league, and you understand what it takes to get there. You also know, when you're not right and you're not yourself, and you need to go and work on some stuff. So, this is something that a lot of really good players go through. Guys who have had success early, lost their way a little bit, and had to get back on track. Happens all the time, and we expect Shane to be another one of those stories of guys that go down there, click back in, and come back and have great careers.
Venable spoke post-game about the team losing again on Wednesday, this time 5-3, as the bullpen is still having difficulties holding on to leads.
Tough series. I thought we played all right, and I think there was a lot of good stuff. We saw a lot of more strike throwing. We continued that trend where we were able to navigate whatever walks we did throw out there. Thought offensively, a little quiet, missing that big knock. today I thought was better than yesterday, where we had some guys committed to moving the fastball forward and did a nice job with that. So, yeah, we just needed that one big hit to get the one today. But, overall a series where there's some good stuff to take away, a lot of stuff that we got to continue to clean up and get better. But these guys played well.
Now joining me on the podcast to help recap the Baltimore series and look ahead to this weekend as the White Sox visit Kansas City is Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margalus. And hello, gentlemen. Before we talk about the Baltimore series and look ahead to this weekend, Shane Smith being optioned to AAA. James, this is something that you and I discussed. And for podcast listeners that maybe missed that episode, you can go to youtube.com/Sox Machine Shane Smith struggles. And we talked about this possibility. If he struggled again against Baltimore, could he be optioned? And I don't know if it's like a great struggle. Unfortunately, after 3 starts, that was maybe his best start of the season. 8 strikeouts, 5 walks, 1 hit allowed, no runs allowed, but it's only 3 2/3 innings. Any idea on what the timeline is for Smith to return to the major leagues, or what boxes he needs to check off?
It's obviously very heavily influenced by performance. There's theoretically a world where he just is absolutely 70% strikes and strikes out 10 people in 5 innings. And it's all right, it looks like he figured it out. Let's call him back up. But you'd think it'd be in the 2 to 4 start range, but it's heavily dependent on what does that last one look like. Like Will Venable said, they want it to be a short thing. I think if it extends beyond 4 starts, it's all right, what's taking so long or what's not sticking a little bit. And I think if it's first 2 were okay and third one looks a little better and then the fourth one looks like he's ready, I don't think he needs more than really one really solid proof of concept start. It's more about expecting one more to look kind of intermediary, but they obviously want it to be shorter. They're not really set up to accommodate this super easily at the start of the season the way that you kind of expect anyone who's not pulling their weight could get swapped out by July for one of their top prospects ascending. I think this is a bit more this is clearly killing us in a way. I think if he did 6 innings, 5 earned on Tuesday, that'd probably be easier for them to be all right, we feel some strides and he didn't kill the bullpen, as opposed to well, if you do this again, you're already put us out for this week a little bit with what you just did. But if you do this again, we can't sustain this inning contribution even more than the walks are too much. It is more just this is not looking sustainable to fill the kind of workload we need, made it bring to bear. So I think a higher strike percentage to emphasize dominating with the 4 seam, and obviously the version of Shane Smith that dominates with fastball is probably a version that throws a lot of strikes. So just seeing him kind of control counts more and get efficiently through innings more than not taking any damage whatsoever. I think it's giving length, throwing strikes, not walking a ton of people. And if he has 1 or 2 outings that look really like the genuine article, that's what he needs. I don't think it's we're forgetting about you and we're moving on to this next paradigm in our starting rotation, because they're not really geared up to do that quite yet. Whereas if he had 4 straight bad ones in the middle of July and Hagen Smith looks awesome, maybe it's just take the time you need to get figured out, Shane. Whereas this is a bit more well, we need to intervene, but it's a quick one, hopefully.
Got it. So it's a minimum of 7 days, right? That Smith has to be in Charlotte.
I believe it's 15 days for pitchers.
15 for pitchers. Wow.
So they have to miss a turn at some point, even if a rain out plus an off day on Monday gives them kind of a break from making a real decision as immediately as this weekend.
Got it. But from Smith's perspective, I know they want 2 to 4, but 15 days, I guess that could be 2 in that stretch, probably closer to 3 or 4. So that'll be something we'll be watching. Jim, daily podcast listeners, covers the White Sox minor leagues, except for Monday because they don't play on Mondays, with the minor keys. So we'll be staying in touch to see on how Shane Smith does. They have StatCast in AAA, so we'll be able to gauge on how his fastball command is going. But Jim, leading up into this weekend and just the rest of April here, let's just assume Smith doesn't return to the White Sox before May 1st. Any ideas, Jim, on how Will Venable, is going to manage this pitching staff, because it doesn't sound like Tyler Schweitzer, who replaces Smith on the roster, is a starting pitcher. So the White Sox right now have 4 starting pitchers that they do not hesitate using Grant Taylor to open for them.
Yeah, I think the first turn is going to be a problem for Tomorrow Guy. I think it's probably how he's looking at it. We'll see what happens when we get to Saturday, see if the forecast holds, see if I need all the pitchers I had scheduled already, see how starters are holding up, and go from there. If he does have to use a starter because they've had to use their bullpen pretty thoroughly, Jonathan Cannon is lined up on Shane Smith's day if they needed somebody with options who can be freely sent up and down, like he's there. So that would be the most obvious answer. Cannon is not pitching that well in Charlotte. He's still in this state of not sure if he's a ground baller or a strikeout guy, and kind of doing neither. So if you were called up, you wouldn't call him up saying like, oh, he might be able to hold down a rotation spot himself. It would be more of a matter of we need an arm to get through 4 innings, if that, take an L and try to spare the rest of the bullpen, or maybe pair him with Schweitzer, try to get 6 between the two of them, and then, have the off day on Monday. So I think that would be the immediate plan, or even like a 1 start later plan if they are able to somehow hold off this decision until a week later. If, Cannon is not the guy, Duncan Davitt would be the other pitcher who's, I guess Tanner McDougal also counts as on the 40-man roster, can be moved up and down without needing a roster spot or starting somebody's clock. So you have that. But I think Cannon would be the one who, if you only have to buy a week, you probably feel like that's the least disruptive. He's been up and down before. You kind of know what he is. You kind of know what he has to work on. And so if he gets a start, goes back down, you don't feel like you're throwing him off in any way, versus, a McDougal who's already kind of overthrowing right now in Charlotte. Maybe doesn't need the pressure of a Chicago start when he's still trying to get his bearings in AAA. So that would be the most obvious answer to me. There's also like the White Sox make waiver claims, so they could always, the pitcher they might use in that spot could be a pitcher who's not in the organization yet. They've done that before. So I guess you can kind of think outside the box further and say, nobody knows who it is because the White Sox haven't signed him yet. But until that point, I would say probably Cannon, and I wouldn't bet Cannon against the field, but I would probably bet on him against any other individual pitcher, just because it's the most convenient and the least to lose on the development side.
And to James, your point, you mentioned that the White Sox have the Mondays off. They have the next 2 Mondays off. After Kansas City, there's a day between the Kansas City series and their 3-game midweek series against Tampa Bay. After visiting the Sacramento A's, they have that Monday off before they are in Phoenix to face the Arizona Diamondbacks. So that does help out, but man, at the end of the week of April, Arizona, then back home to face Washington and the Angels. Day off, San Diego, Anaheim. Day off, come home, Seattle. Day off, Kansas City, Cubs, Seattle, on the road. Day off, and then they don't have another day off for 12 days at the end of May to June. So I know that it's just looking ahead, and hopefully Shane Smith figures this out. But this is a temporary 4-man starting rotation for the Chicago White Sox. It's the White Sox. We've been covering this team long enough. We know that we have to come up with the worst case scenario, or someone's going to have to fill in. But at least for the next 10 days, maybe the White Sox can get away with the 4-man rotation and lean on a bullpen to cover multiple innings and see if that is a winning formula for the White Sox. However, any formula the White Sox are trying to use to get through games in the pitching front, they could really use some more offense. And James, in getting swept by Baltimore, it's already 12 games in the season, 4 series total. Half of them have been 3-game sweeps for the White Sox. And then they swept the other, so 3 out of 4, someone sweeping someone. The White Sox only scored 6 runs against Baltimore. Was it the weather, James? Baltimore's amazing pitching? Or are we circling back to what the fear was preseason, that the White Sox hitters are just a team that will consistently struggle to make contact, and that really showed up against the Orioles?
In zone fastball contact was certainly what Venable was harping upon post game. So I think taking their word for it, that's an issue. And I think some of our readers gripe like, is this kind of the waxing and waning you're going to face when maybe your biggest power threats are Montgomery and Murakami, and those are lower contact guys, and there can look like there's not much thunder without them. Not that he's like become some sort of institution yet, but like they've been banged up in a way where not having Everson Pereira, he's obviously someone who, at least raw power wise, can probably put charge in the ball in the way that like looks like missing from their offense a little bit at the moment. Brooks Baldwin was someone who had decent power, who now isn't going to be a factor all season. Even some of like their prospect talent in terms of like Brandon Montgomery, Sam Antonacci, that probably has like more power than some of what they have in their lineup right now, and that's obviously not ready yet. So between Montgomery, obviously just having a slower start, Kyle Teal being absent, being another source of power, not really getting power from Edgar Caro at all just yet, and Murakami no longer hitting a homer a game. It's been little dribs and drabs kind of from every source all around, along with like how banged up the roster has been, where it's all just not a ton of like scoring. And Austin Hayes, another person who was like 15 to 20 home run pop that you now lost going forward, even though that isn't like, the reason it's been down all week. They've just been kind of taking hits, maybe not huge seismic ones that can allow their valleys to look even worse, but Venable kind of sounded the alarm with the offense last season in a pointed way and kept emphasizing in a way that really didn't see turn up until the second half of the season. He seems like he's starting to get pretty focused on one area right now in terms of like they need to put the ball in play. They need to like at least give themselves a chance to be active in terms of like creating runs or creating havoc on the base pass and feeling like there's not enough contact there. So generally, you can't get managers to say anything bad about the team. If this is what he's honing on, I say take him at his word.
That's a good point, James. One thing I noticed, especially with Colson Montgomery in this series, he had a tough time understanding what the inside corner was, as he punched out looking multiple times on inside fastballs. I wonder if that's something that he needs to work with Derek Shulman.
His big thing is like or at least what we talked about him at Sox Fest was like shaving down the chase rate. So he talked a little bit about like trying to identify like the quadrants that he wants to go after. And talking to Showman a little bit during the first series of the season, he said, like, yeah, we're seeing some calibration in terms of like, here are the zones you kind of want to target and, really be keyed in on, but we don't want to let off like fastballs and hittable zones as well. But you're kind of seeing him figure it out. He saw him stare at like some Mizorowski fastballs he thought he should at least offer at the opening series, and you're still seeing a little bit of like, if not middle, like staring at, but like maybe he's obviously looking for the ball like up and out over the plate and not turning on stuff that's kind of middle in a little bit as readily. Obviously needs to happen a little bit more with two strikes.
Jim, with the White Sox being 4-8, you advocated for them to have a much better March and April than they had the last two seasons. This is not a great record, but they still have a chance to reach double-digit wins before May 1st. They have 19 games remaining in this month, so hopefully they get to 10 wins. They only need to be 6-13 for the rest of this month to reach 10 wins before May 1st. But here's the depressing fact, podcast listeners. The last time the Chicago White Sox had 10 or more wins on May 1st, 2021. It's been a minute. So where the White Sox currently stand and how they have played in the first 12 games of the season, Jim Margalus, do you have any concerns that they will not reach 10 wins before May 1st?
I guess I have concerns in terms of the White Sox having been disappointing before. I would say I would be surprised if they didn't get to 10 wins just because there are so many games. In 2022, I looked it up because I was surprised by that. They only played 20 games in April. They were 8-12. This is 31 games by the time April ends because the season starts earlier. Like that season started on April 8th. This is, March 26th. So you're talking about like 10-21, which is like a 53 win pace or something like that. So you're not asking for the White Sox to be better. You're asking them to be worse than they were last year and still win 10 games. So I guess that's why I would say I wouldn't be surprised, or I would expect them to win 10 games. I feel like winning 10 games is probably like, you can't ask for much more based on how they've started, the flags they've already thrown, their history of just starting this poorly, kind of getting pantsed by teams that are better in low scoring environments. And then you have the whole idea of like, well, the upside and the pitching isn't coming till later. So they could also be working with like one of their lesser pitching staffs all season 2 at this point. So yeah, I could see them being 10-21 and expecting that to be the bare minimum, but also like, yeah, kind of like the difference between the floor and the ceiling is pretty small. It's like a crawl space. So yeah, it's pretty disappointing. It's kind of like the way Chris Getz talked about, like, how about winning 19 more games and still losing record? You know, the way the White Sox have set their standards over the past few years with 300 lost seasons, like, it's easy to lull yourself into thinking like that's improvement. And it's actually not, because they've just been so bad for the bulk of it that it's really hard to discern ordinary from below average to bad versus very bad versus historically bad. It's all been degrees of, what other teams will consider disappointing.
Yeah, I think for the rest of this month, this is going to be the stretch where come October, I'm going to be crushed in the end of the season sporcle, not remembering that Dustin Harris was in the White Sox and played games for the White Sox. Tanner Murray started games for the White Sox at shortstop. Watching Andrew Benintendi leg out a triple, bless his heart, he got there. He's slow, so it took a really bad throw and bad relay for Baltimore for him to get that triple, but he got it. But with Austin Hayes in the IL with the hamstring injury and Benintendi struggling to run, those are your veteran outfielders. Everybody else, it feels like it's the Charlotte Knights that I'm watching play outfield for the Chicago White Sox, and that's just how this season's going to go unless they start going dumpster diving in the waiver wire to add more outfielders. I think that's kind of where my concern is like we've been harping on this, Jim, throughout the offseason, and if Colson struggles and Munetaka Murakami's still getting adjusted to Major League pitching, this offense suddenly becomes like Chase Mydraw, do something. Miguel Vargas, do something. They can't do it. All right, here come the Charlotte Knights, and they're batting 5th through 9th right now in the White Sox lineup. It's a lot of quadruple A players on this roster.
I feel better about ranking Kyle Teal the second most essential White Sox.
That was spot on.
I kind of wrestled with that a little bit, but I was thinking in terms of if he reaches his potential or like close to his potential, I would say like even like his 60th to 70th percentile outcome. I'd say like that's a guy you like seeing in the lineup every day, and that's a guy who can affect the game in a couple different ways. And then you try to look at all the other White Sox who meet that description. And you kind of run out after like Munetaka Murakami based on a very hazy projection from his Japan numbers, and you can't really saddle him with that. So yeah, it was like Montgomery and Teal, and then kind of pretty dicey after that. So I think you are feeling the absence of Kyle Teal, especially early on.
And James, do we have an update on Teal? Is he close?
He's doing fine. We talked to him today. He's hit the last 3 days and hitting was something he actually couldn't do for a little bit because he felt like a grabbing sensation when he the front side of his swing or activating the front side of his swing for a while. So he's been catching the whole time. He says like range of motion's not quite there. He's still dealing with a little scar tissue, and he said he's working on his sprint speed and that it's obviously on an upward trend, but maybe not quite at finished product that he's hitting his old highs just yet. So there's still not like a date where he's going to go on a rehab assignment. He's traveling with the team on this road trip, which is fun and cool. He's been close to the team, but it also indicates he's not being sent out on a rehab assignment, probably on this 4-day trip, or at least until next week. So it's definitely looking like he hasn't had a setback. He's definitely still going pretty fine and upbeat about it, but it's definitely trending towards 6 weeks. And yeah, he had a grade 2 hamstring strain. The initial optimism is definitely given way to reality to some degree, but it's I don't think it's things that backed up or are not recovering in a way that's the way Brooks Baldwin was just no update, still rehabbing, sort of non-progress situation. I don't think it's that at all.
What was that about, by the way? Why were the White Sox unclear about the situation with Brooks Baldwin when it sounds like he had surgery last week, so that his fate was already sealed?
Why they why there was 6 days between that announcement, I can't know. Like everything else kind of represented the typical holding pattern you see when somebody is weighing whether to continue a rehab process that they don't see there's enough progress of versus deciding on surgery. And they definitely kind of termed it in terms of they put it kind of like idea of like this was ultimately his decision of this is the remedy he wanted to take. And I'm sure Brooks didn't want to miss a year of the season where he can be proving a spot, but it's also like it didn't seem like there was a single incident where it's like, all right, he blew out, he needs surgery a bit more in terms of like, is he going to be able to throw and contribute this year versus like, are we going to come back here? Is this going to flare up again? Or how much is this staving off something that's going to be inevitable? So it certainly took a while because like this is a major decision in his career, and it wasn't like a obvious like flip of the switch, like this is the thing to do. And eventually it happened on this protracted timeline, but ultimately in terms of when he would come back, I don't think it changed anything. So that's why they're in a position to, decide when they feel like they've exhausted other possibilities, I guess.
Sorry, Jim. I know you're a big Brooks Baldwin fan. We're not going to get a chance to see how he progresses this season.
No, it's definitely weird that they took or that long after the surgery happened to admit that it happened. Like it definitely seems to reflect a disconnect. It seems between.
There were multiple media availabilities between the surgery date and the announcement date where he was asked about, and there was essentially no update for whatever reason.
Very odd.
Reminds me of my my friend in high school used to say in a car, like, gentlemen, I'm about to fart and there's nothing you can do about it because it already happened. And then it would hit you. And I just wonder if maybe Brooks pulled the same thing, like, already got surgery. But no, I imagine it was more. Yeah, it was odd though. And, having written the Joe Creedy Sabre biography when as part of Sabre's 2005 White Sox team, and the whole will he, won't he, who was on his side, who isn't, for the back surgery that he had, and talking about how like he didn't need it, he could have just healed better, and like it was back and forth. And you see Creedy now and just like, I don't think there was much of a choice based on the way he's moving, and you don't do back surgery lightly. So yeah, it's there. I don't think there's such thing as a casual surgery that, especially when it costs a season. So, but yeah, it seems to reflect at least some lack of endorsement if the White Sox were that removed from it. So yeah, a little bit weird.
Well, for the Chicago White Sox, they now head to Kansas City this weekend. The Royals are 5-7 this season. They've lost their last two, and they are 3-3 at Kauffman Stadium. Your pitching probables for this series: Anthony Kay will get the ball on Thursday night. This is a 6:40 p.m. Central Time start against Seth Lugo. Lugo starting the season well. Again, for Kansas City, has a 1.59 ERA. Friday night, 6:40 again. The Dart, Davis Martin. Davis has been pitching really well for the White Sox. It'll be the lefty, Chris Bubich, for the Royals. Saturday afternoon, this is a 3:10 p.m. Central Time start. Eric Fetty takes the ball against Michael Wacha. Wacha only has a 0.69 ERA to start this season. And then on Sunday, we'll see what the White Sox do. This is a 1:10 p.m. Central Time start, but it will be the lefty Noah Cameron who's been pitching well for Kansas City. Pitching has been going well for Kansas City. It's the offense that's been slow out of the gate for the Royals. However, the Royals have loved facing the Chicago White Sox. They are 22-4 against the White Sox the last two seasons. The White Sox have lost 14 straight games at Kauffman Stadium. This is one of the season goals, Jim, that we have laid out for the 2026 White Sox. Are we seeing progress? Win a game at Kauffman Stadium. That's all we're asking, Jim. Go 1-3. I do not want to record a podcast on Monday and see them getting swept again at Kauffman Stadium. They have to find a way to win a game at Kauffman. I have to speak that into existence. No sweep.
Zach Bove, this is your time. Pedro Gaffol couldn't do it, and he was the manager, and he had more direct say over the whole way the White Sox were run. He was bench coaching with the Royals for longer. So you would think that he would be able to do that and wasn't able to reverse it. But yeah, now it's up to Zach Bove to figure it out. It's it's really something.
Sure is.
Yeah, it's like the whole Hawk Harrelson thing. It's not who you play, it's when you play them. Like with the Royals and White Sox, I think on the Royals side, it's who you play.
Yeah.
Like they're always happy to see the White Sox no matter what, no matter how they're playing. They're just like the get right team.
And James will be there reporting for us at Kauffman Stadium. Huge thank you again to our Sox Machine subscribers. As always, thank you for your support to allow us to go on the road. And James, you've been at a few of these games between the White Sox and the Royals at Kauffman Stadium. Any idea why Kauffman Stadium is the Chicago White Sox personal hell?
Maybe they wind up themselves having to walk too far from their hotel through the parking lot in the sun and get like some sort of heat stroke that affects their plate discipline in some way. Kind of, I guess, broad strokes. The Royals have been kind of a base running and defense sort of team that forces a kind of sloppy defending or sloppy in terms of manufacturing runs sort of White Sox team that tends to find them bleeding on the margins away. So it's when it's not a lot of White Sox teams, certainly the previous front office were like, let's try to load up on power in a way that would then not show up as much as they want, or at least play to diminished effect in Kauffman Stadium. At this point, I'm drawing from memories of like the 2012 White Sox, like hitting 4 solo home runs and losing. There are games like that. But there's not necessarily like some great rhyme or reason that makes the 4 games that are coming against them impossible, so to speak. I just think they've mostly been bad teams during that time. And bad teams struggle on the road. And this is certainly like a different environment from their home stadium. They have to kind of play a consistent and mistake-free level of baseball. And just the teams of the recent years have not been good at that. Certainly they're drawing upon, or in the past have drawn a lot of former Royals talent, or just ways where like maybe they know how to defang what the White Sox are doing. Or there's a curse under the grounds of Kauffman Stadium, somewhere buried between a little concrete pathway between whatever they're calling the Chief Stadium now and Kauffman, and it's zapping the frequencies of all the White Sox hitters' brains. I don't know. It certainly has been bad. It's beyond the point of reason, like outlier results as well. So I can't pin it down.
Yeah, Chase Mydroth getting hit in the head with a pop-up.
Oh, yeah, that happened last year at Kauffman.
Yeah.
Things to that nature.
Cam Boozer feels like a whole different time.
Sure did. Offensively, Jim, obviously, the way that the White Sox hit against Baltimore, every hitter in this lineup could use a big series against Kansas City. But on the position player side, who needs the biggest series the most?
Seems like Edgar Caro, both for his numbers and for his well-being, based on the quotes that James is relaying from the clubhouse after games. This was his time to shine with Teal out, and really hasn't done it. I think Reese McGuire coming in and providing nothing, in terms of the expected offense, I guess, is just you would expect offers from him, but just haven't really seen any kind of impact to where, like, seems like Corey Lee could have done that. Not necessarily that Lee was worth keeping because he cleared waivers, but just in terms of, them overthinking the position. And like, now you have a case where you have a $1.2 million salary, and then who knows what you do with it if Teal comes back fully intact. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mess behind the plate, and it really seems like Caro is kind of key to untangling that and helping the offense gain a layer. Like, he's not going to be somebody who can define the offense like Teal can when he's hot, I think, just because you don't have the athleticism that can create doubles where maybe there's a single, and he doesn't have the kind of easier power that Teal has with the ability to pull the ball to right field. But there's enough plate discipline there. There's enough pop there when there's a mistake to where he should at least be like a part of the secondary wave of hitters to help lengthen the lineup and be a run producing threat. And right now he is not that. And when you have the outfield being what it is as well, and you're counting on catcher being a plus position, any position that turns into a liability, even if it's just for like 12 days or 12 games, like it's felt in a way that it might not be felt if they had even one fully functional outfielder.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Caro or McGuire did something offensively in this weekend series against Kansas City. The way that Reese McGuire is starting this season, performance-wise, is really a head-scratcher, and why the White Sox made that move and had to play the waiver wire game with Corey Lee. How is Corey Lee faring in Charlotte?
He homered tonight, but he's also under the Mendoza line, so
yikes. Okay,
generally
maybe they were
Corey Lee
justified.
level of production of there's power there, but there's some contact wavering that you have to ride the wave a little bit.
Well, maybe the White Sox are just doomed at catcher until Kyle Teal returns. James, any idea? I know I just read off the pitching problems for the White Sox, but any idea if Grant Taylor, the opener, makes another appearance against the Royals this weekend?
No, they haven't said anything about it. It's Grant himself said he usually finds out like 24 hours in advance at most. So you could see it in the simple idea of like Bobby Witt being at the top of the order is enough reason to hear something for the top of the order, but they haven't spoken to it. They kind of go in spurts of like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make it. It makes a lot of sense. And then you do it in rapid succession, and you see them go away from it a little bit, as happened last season. So I could certainly see the argument for it. I don't know if like having K a little bit alters it, where in terms of like, are you flipping the handedness of the opposing order, and is that what they're trying to accomplish, or are they specifically not doing that because they've been really just trying to push the back of the they're trying to push the top of the order back to when it gets faced the third time by the bulk pitcher, but they haven't given hints of that. We had enough to sort through with the whole opening day starter not being there anymore, or meeting new players, seemingly more days than not over this homestand.
No, understand. Well, again, James will be reporting from Kansas City for us. So again, huge thank you to our subscribers. If you are not a Sox Machine subscriber and you would like to help us out, you can gain access to all of James's coverage out of Kansas City by signing to become a Sox Machine supporter at soxmachine.com/products. Monthly plans start at $5. We also do have annual memberships that come with a discount. Again, go to soxmachine.com/products to sign up. And then before we sign off, around Major League Baseball, we like to point out one thing that caught our attention, and I think there's one thing that caught all of our attention. James Fegan, Reynaldo Lopez punched Jorge Soler with a baseball. What do you make of that?
I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I was like saying it out loud. I was walking in Wednesday, as it's today, and literally as I opened the door of the clubhouse, like it's on a TV as we're passing, as we're walking in. So it's like Shane Smith just got optioned, but I'm saying out loud, "Hey, Frankie's in the background." Man, I can't believe this. And like the Sox PR person who actually didn't know what I was talking about saw it. I was like, yeah, I know. Like, of all the people, I was wondering, do like the players hear this, like us having this loud, cartoonishly loud conversation all with it could be about Shane Smith, but is actually about, we can't believe that Reynaldo Lopez, one of like the sweetest dudes like I've ever covered, just very good natured, smiley family man with, cute daughters. Like, not the person I thought to be in a brawl, throwing fists, trying to bash someone's head with a baseball. I kind of feel like, I mean, on the one hand, like Jorge Soler is the aggressor in terms he charged him on, but obviously he felt like Ronaldo's buzzing him with, 95 plus, that maybe he feels Ronaldo's the aggressor, but it's hard to imagine Ronaldo getting like, it's hard to imagine him as the initiator of something like that.
Well, Jim, using the baseball as a weapon for a pitcher, this may be a new trend. I think we could see this moving forward to help protect yourself. Instead of like breaking your hand on someone's fist, just actually use the baseball.
I think it's probably more sound. Perhaps you pinch a finger or something like that, like get
Do you have a lot of
blood
experience
blister.
punching people in the face with a baseball, Jim?
No, I was just trying to think like in terms of when you like people hurt themselves punching, it's usually
Yes.
because they break a knuckle or something like that. Like so, it actually helps to have something in your hand, and so like yeah, it could be a case of one weird trick that keeps your pitching hand healthy in a brawl. That you don't have to use your offhand or throw your glove while backpedaling. Yeah, it's I guess you see fight or flight sometimes, and he's got to fight. Good for him.
With respect to Ronaldo, he did not control the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of his actions were in terms of reactive. So maybe the baseball thing wasn't any sort of plan, so to speak.
And Walt Weiss tackled someone. I don't know who he tackled, but
Soler, I
yeah.
thought.
oh, really? Oh,
Head to the groin.
damn, Walt.
Yeah, wrapped up.
Wow. And there was the whole, I think it's Wilson Contreras, his issue with the Milwaukee Brewers, in which the Brewers have hit him more than any other team, and he's tired of them. We could see more fights, maybe, this season in 2026.
Can't complain about ABS. So like they got to channel their frustration somewhere.
There was the judge who won in Wisconsin. It was named Chris Taylor, and my friend Craig Goldstein is a Dodgers fan. Like, couldn't believe it. Chris Taylor of all people someone named Chris Taylor won an election in Wisconsin. And my first thought was like, well, maybe they're running against someone named Wilson Contreras, and that would be like where they'd have an edge.
Jim, anything that caught your attention around Major League Baseball?
That was the big one in terms of just the spectacle. A bunch of like smaller, weird sample things jumping out. Like the White Sox are 4-8, but so are the Tigers, and the Mariners are actually worse. I think if you had me pick like the teams that could be worse than the White Sox at 4-8, I don't think the Mariners would be one. AL Central, you can't rule out any team just because the Centrals. But yeah, the Mariners were supposed to be poised for a pretty, big start, like improved upon a team that could have gone to the World Series last year. So that's a little bit shocking. Luis Robert Jr. has walked 10 times in 10 games, which he kind of did last year. Like he had a big surge of walks early, but it came at the expense of his production. This year, he is actually doing okay bat to ball. Only one extra base hit. It was a homer, like an extra innings homer. But, otherwise he's kind of still singles and walks, and like what kind of hitter is he going to turn out to be? That's interesting. And then like Peyton Pallette so far holding his own. Like I've been keeping an eye on him as the White Sox have returned both of their Rule 5 picks when they could have given him a roster spot. And that was kind of weird that he didn't kind of get one just by combination of second round investment and decent performance at AAA. And he's holding his own right now. And, the typical low leverage, usually entering in losses, work 1 to 2 innings. If it goes poorly, it will not, have this cascade effect on the team. And, he's owning that right now. I guess we'll see if he gets to higher leverage situations, what happens. But, like he's with the White Sox Rule 5 picks already out of the mix. And, had the option, or he had options so he could be freely sent down within, I think, a maximum of 4 times, up and down to Chicago and back to Charlotte. Like, worth keeping an eye on him. And so far, he's at least passing the initial test of, can you get hitters out in any situation? And it seems like he is.
For me, I'm paying attention to the injuries. Lots of big injuries so far. Juan Soto's in the injured list. The Chicago Cubs lost Cade Horton for the season. They're still waiting to get Justin Steele back. So the Cubs are trying to... they're 6-6 right now, so they're doing a good job of treading water. They're last place right now in the National League Central, as everyone. The division's off to a pretty good start, but I'm curious to see what the Cubs do with the starting rotation if they add mid-season, because that's a pretty big blow unless they're really hoping that Justin Steele returns back to form. But yeah, lots of injuries across Major League Baseball to start this season. Definitely a lot of waiver activity in the Sox Machine Fantasy Baseball League right now, which it happened again, James. I tied. So I'm 0-2 in fantasy baseball. I'll figure out a way to get a result in week 3.
I'm 1-0, but I too am waiting for Justin Steele to get back.
There you go. So Steele will save not only the Chicago Cubs season, but also James's fantasy baseball team. Is Mike Trout hurt yet?
What do you mean yet? He's been good. I will concede he has been helpful.
That's good to hear. That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, we'll be back with another podcast episode on Sunday night as we recap the action that took place in Kansas City, but James will have the camera with him this weekend. So check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine, as we'll be posting videos daily as far as interviews, post-game, pre-game, any breaking news that happens over the weekend. We'll be covering it also on SoxMachine.com. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also follow us on Twitter at Sox Machine, Blue Sky at SoxMachine.com, and also Instagram at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan across the platforms. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margalus and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.